these things. They're the ones that are seeing this. I thought it was interesting, though, this morning. I haven't given it tons of detailed thought because this is going on, and yet we're sitting here reading a book that is an apology for the core of the Christian faith, a believer who was a non-believer who really sat down and thought his way through it and came back to it. So it's interesting to me, these are real sort of battles that you're going through with your neighbors. Maybe you may not be going through them, but people around you are, which is why we read something like this to help us. And it doesn't mean you argue somebody into the faith, but you sort of help them to see, like, maybe, why are you talking about what you're talking about? Bible couldn't be true. Okay, how do you know that? And then you find out that sometimes some of that's fairly flimsy evidence or belief that they're really working on. They oftentimes they will claim, well, this is totally true and totally unbiased, until you point out their biases. And then suddenly it's like, oh, well, maybe there's a bias there. So I just thought it was interesting, and I brought this book for Mary, Quiet Mary, and I wonder if those names will stick. I guess we'll see. But why don't we open up with a word of prayer?
Here comes Quiet Mary.
Oh, Quiet Mary! Yay! Well, I was trying to contrast the Marys that I was talking about here a moment ago. So one is a Quiet Mary and one is a Loud Mary.
We both love animals.
Yeah, see, that doesn't work as a distinguisher. So I brought the book for you. You can have it afterwards. Got to stay for the whole class. I'm just saying.
That's my intention.
Yeah, okay. Prayer. Father, thank you for today. Thank you for the rainy weather. It makes me want to stay inside, and hopefully it keeps us all focused here on the study that we're going through and helps the earth rejuvenate. These are April showers, so hopefully the May flowers will be coming. I ask that you bless us, bless our thoughts, just bless our discussion. Just keep us focused on you, Father, as we go through this book today. We ask for wisdom. We ask for grace. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. So like I said, name of the chapter, is Christianity hard or easy? Most of us said yes. And why do we say yes? Well, I give us a couple of scriptural examples. Matthew 16, Jesus told his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. I like my life. I like doing what I want to do. But Jesus says if you want to gain him, if you want to do it, you got to give up your life. That sounds hard. It does sound hard. However, a little earlier he said, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Well, that sounds easy, darn it. The heck's up with Jesus? Oh, that would be a class. What the heck's up with Jesus? Get a whole study series going. All right, let's read the chapter. Could develop something there. Ooh, happy light. Chapter 8, is Christianity hard or easy? In the previous chapter, we were considering the Christian idea of putting on Christ, or first dressing up as a son of God in order that you may finally become a real son. What I want to make clear is that this is not one among many jobs a Christian has to do, and it is not a sort of special exercise for the top class. It is the whole of Christianity. Christianity offers nothing else at all. And I should like to point out how it differs from ordinary ideas of morality and being good. The ordinary idea, which we all have before we become Christians, is this. We take as starting point our ordinary self with its various desires and interests. We then admit that something else, call it morality or decent behavior or the good of society, has claims on this self, claims which interfere with its own desires. What we mean by being good is giving in to those claims. Some of the things the ordinary self wanted to do turn out to be what we call wrong. Well, we must give them up. Other things which the self did not want to do turn out to be what we call right. Well, we shall have to do them. But we are hoping all the time that when all the demands have been met, the poor natural self will still have some chance and some time to get on with its own life and do what it likes. In fact, we are very like an honest man paying his taxes. He pays them all right, but he does hope that there will be enough left over for him to live on, because we are still taking our natural self as the starting point. As long as we are thinking that way, one or other of two results is likely to follow. Either we give up trying to be good, or else we become very unhappy indeed. For, make no mistake, if you are really going to try to meet all the demands made on the natural self, it will not have enough left over to live on. The more you obey your conscience, the more your conscience will demand of you. And your natural self, which is thus being starved and hampered and worried at every turn, will get angrier and angrier. In the end, you will either give up trying to be good, or else become one of those people who, as they say, live for others, but always in a discontented, grumbling way, always wondering why the others do not notice it more, and always making a martyr of yourself. And once you have become that, you will be a far greater pest to anyone who has to live with you than you would have been if you had remained, frankly, selfish. The Christian way is different, harder, and easier. Christ says, "Give me all. I don't want so much of your time and so much of your money and so much of your work. I want you. I have not come to torment your natural self, but to kill it. No half measures are any good. I don't want to cut off a branch here and a branch there. I want to have the whole tree down. I don't want to drill the truth. I don't want to drill the tooth or crown it or stop it, but to have it out. Hand over the whole natural self, all the desires which you think innocent as well as the ones you think wicked, the whole outfit. I will give you a new self instead. In fact, I will give you myself. My own will shall become yours." Both harder and easier than what we are all trying to do. You have noticed, I expect, that Christ himself sometimes describes the Christian way as very hard, sometimes as very easy. He says, "Take up your cross." In other words, it is like going to be beaten to death in a concentration camp. Next minute he says, "My yoke is easy and my burden light." He means both. And one can just see why both are true. Teachers will tell you that the laziest boy in the class is the one who works hardest in the end. They mean this. If you give two boys, say, a proposition in geometry to do, the one who is prepared to take trouble will try to understand it. The lazy boy will try to learn it by heart because, for the moment, that needs less effort. But 6 months later, when they are preparing for an exam, that lazy boy is doing hours and hours of miserable drudgery over things the other boy understands and positively enjoys in a few minutes. Laziness means more work in the long run. Or look at it this way. In a battle or in mountain climbing, there is often one thing which it takes a lot of pluck to do. But it is also in the long run the safest thing to do. If you funk it, you will find yourself hours later in far worse danger. The cowardly thing is also the most dangerous thing. It is like that here. The terrible thing, the almost impossible thing, is to hand over your whole self, all your wishes and precautions to Christ. But it is far easier than what we are all trying to do instead. For what we are trying to do is to remain what we call ourselves, to keep personal happiness as our great aim in life, and yet at the same time be good. We are all trying to let our mind and heart go their own way, centered on money or pleasure or ambition, and hoping in spite of this to behave honestly and chastely and humbly. And that is exactly what Christ warned us you could not do. As he said, a thistle cannot produce figs. If I am a field that contains nothing but grass seed, I cannot produce wheat. Cutting the grass may keep it short, but I shall still produce grass and no wheat. If I want to produce wheat, the change must go deeper than the surface. I must be plowed up and re-sown. That is why the real problem of the Christian life comes where people do not usually look for it. It comes the very moment you wake up each morning. All your wishes and hopes for the day rush at you like wild animals, and the first job each morning consists simply in shoving them all back, in listening to that other voice, taking that other point of view, letting that other larger, stronger, quieter life come flowing in. And so on all day, standing back from all your natural fussings and frettings, coming in out of the wind. We can only do it for moments at first, but from those moments, the new sort of life will be spreading through our system, because now we are letting him work at the right part of us. It is the difference between paint, which is merely laid on the surface, and a dye or stain which soaks right through. He never talked vague, idealistic gas. When he said, "Be perfect," he meant it. He meant that we must go in for the full treatment. It is hard, but the sort of compromise we are all hankering after is harder. In fact, it is impossible. It may be hard for an egg to turn into a bird. It would be a jolly sight harder for it to learn to fly while remaining an egg. We are like eggs at present, and you cannot go on indefinitely being just an ordinary, decent egg. We must be hatched or go bad.
I love that.
May I come back to what I said before? This is the whole of Christianity. There is nothing else. It is so easy to get muddled about that. It is easy to think that the church has a lot of different objects: education, building, missions, holding services. Just as it is easy to think the state has a lot of different objects: military, political, economic, and whatnot. But in a way, things are much simpler than that. The state exists simply to promote and to protect the ordinary happiness of human beings in this life. A husband and wife chatting over a fire, a couple of friends having a game of darts in a pub, a man reading a book in his own room or digging in his own garden. That is what the state is there for. And unless they are helping to increase and prolong and protect such moments, all the laws, parliaments, armies, courts, police, economics, etc., are simply a waste of time. In the same way, the church exists for nothing else but to draw men into Christ, to make them little Christs. If they are not doing that, all the cathedrals, clergy, missions, sermons, even the Bible itself are simply a waste of time. God became man for no other purpose. It is even doubtful, whether the whole universe was created for any other purpose. It says in the Bible that the whole universe was made for Christ, and that everything is to be gathered together in him. I do not suppose any of us can understand how this will happen as regards the whole universe. We do not know what, if anything, lives in the parts of it that are millions of miles away from this earth. Even on this earth, we do not know how it applies to things other than men. After all, that is what you would expect. We have been shown the plan only insofar as it concerns ourselves. I sometimes like to imagine that I can just see how it might apply to other things. I think I can see how the higher animals are in a sense drawn into man when he loves them and makes them as he does, much more nearly human than they would otherwise be. I can even see a sense in which the dead things and plants are drawn into man as he studies them and uses and appreciates them. And if there were intelligent creatures in other worlds, they might do the same with their worlds. It might be that when intelligent creatures entered into Christ, they would, in that way, bring all the other things in along with them. But I do not know. It is only a guess. What we have been told is how we men can be drawn into Christ, can become part of that wonderful present which the young Prince of the universe wants to offer to his Father, that present which is himself, and therefore us in him. It is the only thing we were made for. And there are strange, exciting hints at the Bible that when we are drawn in, a great many other things in nature will begin to come right. The bad dream will be over. It will be morning. Loud Mary, quiet Mary. Yes, I like this chapter. Very, very, very interesting. Even if we don't always think the way that he says we think, we do sometimes think that way. What does Lewis say is the ordinary idea we sort of have before we become Christians? Starts this whole chapter off saying we think a certain way. What do we tend to do?
Believe.
But what do we believe? What do we think about our lives? We do this with kids a lot. Yeah, raising hands now. We're polite. Yes, ma'am.
We take as starting point our ordinary self with its various desires and interests is good enough. We want to preserve it, our natural self.
Yeah, we sort of start with we sort of start with what we know, and there's us, and we're kind of here.
You
And
kids.
hmm.
You mean you mentioned children. Is this like the basic?
Well,
kids?
because what do we do with children? We start with children, and he says we get into this idea that there are things we ought to do, and there are things we shouldn't ought to do. Shouldn't ought to do. Yeah, okay, I'm happy with that. And so what do? We teach that to children. Go do this. Don't do that. And insofar as it goes, it's okay. It's good. Kind of gives you a stability. And I think it's easy with children. It's easier with children to see it because we work so hard at that. Churches, I'll get into this opinion later, but sometimes churches work really hard and they create people who follow rules very well because we give them rules. We give them things to do or not to do. That's not necessarily the same as faith and belief. Get into that discussion later. I'm going a little bit off track, but take it from the children, take it to you. You know you should do something, you know you should not do something. What does Lewis say? That if we just continue thinking in this manner, we're kind of likely to run into two results. What are they?
Well, one result, we're going to get frustrated because we're not going to be able to do the things that we're supposed to be doing.
Oh yeah, we're going to give up. We're going to say, because the part of you that says you should go do this. Okay, I want you to go and give this to your neighbor. Okay, you might do it once. But then your conscience may say, well, you need to go and give more. And it's like, okay. And maybe a little begrudgingly you'll go and give. And then maybe you'll try again. But maybe you get to a point, the harder it goes, because what happens? You know you need to do more and more. We know that. We know We need to continue being good. And your conscience or even the Spirit may call to you and say, go do, go do, go do. And eventually you might just be like, nah, I'm not going to do. Why? Because the natural self says, yeah, but I want that. I don't want to loan that out. I don't want to give that out. And it works the other way too. Don't do that. What's the surest way to find out your kid's going to try to do something? Yeah. Don't touch that. Don't get that. Don't do that. Don't.
Look at Eve.
Well, yeah. Look at Eve.
Don't
Look at
eat
Eve.
the fruit.
So you're either going to just give it up. You're either going to say, look, I can't achieve this, and you're going to give up. Or I think passably my favorite part of this whole thing is you're just going to become a very angry, unhappy person because you're not achieving the goals. Nothing will ever be perfect enough. Nothing is, you're looking at the world. Does that sound familiar to anybody? I don't even know that I want to get into this discussion right now, but look at what's happening in society right now. A lot of people who are looking at a lot of different things and intersectionality and how, who is the most oppressed, who is the least oppressed, and people are starting to eat each other alive because they can't agree. That's exactly what he's talking about here. What?
Would this qualify, the second example, would this qualify as burnout, or is that something different, like burnout in ministry? Where you're just exhausted and you've given so much and your physical capacity is depleted.
Maybe. I mean, burnout in the sense of you've just kept going and going and going and you eventually have tired yourself out. Maybe, although I think it's a slightly different component from the sense of nothing is ever good enough, which is, I think, what he's kind of getting at. You're getting angry because I think we should do more. How come we're not doing this? Why aren't we doing that? My conscience keeps pulling me, and eventually nobody wants to hang out with you. It's kind of the way he said it. You're so miserable.
You're so uptight about keeping the law.
In a way, yeah. Yeah, and burnout could be part of that, although I think it's a separate problem, sort of, from what he's talking about here. So the point he's making at this point is this is the way most of us think about our lives. I am me, I am this creature, and, there is a morality somewhere, and I know I should follow it, and darn it, I'm going to try to do what's good. And, you don't have to be a believer necessarily to have this view of life.
It's kind of like my eating.
I just want to point out there's a microphone hanging right on top of your head. Well.
Thank you.
No problem. You go ahead, you say whatever you want to say. So that's the way the ordinary person thinks. Don't have to be a Christian to think that way. Now, he says there is a Christian way that is different than that. We're kind of asking the question, is this Christian way harder or easier than that?
And from that aspect, it would be easier.
In some ways, yeah. Yeah.
Because we strive for perfection, knowing that we can make it and relying on Christ to forgive
Yeah.
us when we don't.
Yeah, that is the big thing. It gets you off the hamster wheel. The hamster wheel just keeps going and going and going, no matter what, no matter how hard you run. From what I've heard, I try not to run very often, but no matter how hard you run, you never get anywhere. We have whole gyms made up for people who like that. You just keep running and running and don't go anywhere. That's what that's what he's talking about for the ordinary person. Christianity says, get off the wheel. So in that sense, it's easier. How is it harder, though, at the same time? Because he says it's both. How does it become harder than our ordinary view of life? Who here likes dying? What? No arm? No?
Don't know,
Nobody?
I haven't experienced
Haven't
it.
had it, haven't done it yet.
It might be better than the torture that he just described.
Some. Yeah. He says it's not a matter of, I'm just checking to see. Yeah. He uses the idea of the person who pays taxes. You go to pay your taxes. And what is your hope at the end of the day when you do your taxes?
Get a refund.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get a little something back. You haven't given everything you got. He says, okay, that makes the ordinary person feels good. He said that's what some people think the Christian life is like. I'm going to follow what God says, and, I'm going to do a few good things. And then at the end of the day, I'm going to sit back. I'm going to go fishing. I'm going to go do what I want, watch TV, go to the movies. I'm going to have fun because that's what I am. And he says, that's not what Jesus called you to. Doesn't mean you can't do those things, but he said, that's not what Jesus called you to do, is to be you, just be you a little better. He said, no. He said, Jesus called you in your entirety, your whole life viewed through Christ. And in that sense, it's harder. In that sense, you come to question a lot of what you do. He wants all of you, not the part of you that's convenient, not the part of you that has some free time. So in that sense, it's harder. It's easier in that there's a path for you to do it. But it's harder in the sense of you don't get to just, I just wake up every day and I've got such a temper and I get out on the road and I get angry at everybody. It's just the way I'm wired. Okay. You think God is going to have you live like that? But yet, how many people do you talk to that you hear stuff like that? That's just the way I am. Okay. Give it all over to Christ, because he's trying to make you better than you are. It's a whole different ball game when you think about what Christ wants of you. And that kind of we're getting into the next question there. Lewis says the real challenge begins for the Christian the moment he awakes in the morning. I love this example. Why? How does that work? What happens when you wake up in the morning?
Yeah, it all comes at you.
Everything comes rushing in. If you haven't been dreaming about it the night before, is everybody retired enough that they don't dream about everything all night? Work.
Depends on the day.
I know. But even then, I know when I was working full time with what I did, I did not sleep well some nights, because it's like, oh, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. And you wake up in the morning, and in the morning it's like, okay, what are my responsibilities today? The whole world comes at you. You open your eyes. Hopefully the sun is coming up or is up, or maybe you're one of those people who gets up before the sun is up. I'm one of those people. I have a lovely blue light alarm clock, so it puts the fake sun into my room and it helps me get up in the morning. Otherwise, I would be grouchy and grumpy and cranky. I need those. But you wake up and the world is just making its demands. Gotta get ready, gotta hop in the shower, gotta get going, gotta get this person up, gotta get that person up. The world is there and making its demands. And what does he sort of say about that?
You have to push it away and listen to Christ.
Yeah, there is something about taking some time first thing in the morning. My cat has been tearing up my hand lately. I don't know why, but I'm looking at all these scratches and cuts on my hand. It's not me. There's something about taking the time first thing in the morning. And it's hard because the morning is the time you're trying to jump out the door. But to take some time in prayer, in devotion, in something. Doesn't have to be formally structured, doesn't have to be big, but to just take some time. Because what do you usually do? I'm going to ask the question, nobody will know the answer I'm looking for. Do you sometimes find when you do that, your priorities for the day change a little? If you start your day with a little bit of prayer.
I think you're looking at the wrong group of people here, Jim, because we're all retired, and we get to do that and relax, and
I'm not.
it's, I'm sorry.
She married.
Other than Mary.
Other than Mary, yeah.
Not till Lee retires and the dog dies.
Or Lee retires.
So let's get the order.
I don't usually wake up in the morning with my.
No,
head
and
full.
some people don't,
Yeah.
and that's fine. But I mean, what about when you were working?
That was a different.
That was a different time. I agree.
But I think if I wake up and I see the sun, I truly think, oh wow. I mean, I really think the sun makes me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, oh, this is going to be a beautiful day. But again, I am retired, so I can I do have commitments during the day, but I don't know, that morning time for me, of course, I sit in my recliner and I have my coffee and I play my Wordle and I can have some devotions if I want.
See, Jim, a whole different
This
lifestyle.
may be the ordinary self we're talking about here. Maybe you do need a shot of get up and
Yeah,
go somewhere.
so- but I think if I wake up with that feeling, it's a much better day than when I used to have to, get up and say, like you were saying, okay, now let me think of what I have to do today. Got to do this and this and this and this and this.
Mhm.
And whereas now, not that I do so much great reflection, but it is different. So I think you could still do that if you got up early enough
Is 5 o'clock early enough?
to do that. Yeah.
With the dog whining at you?
So I think I think that's a very good idea. And I think also, now he's got me thinking, what I should do is actually get up earlier so that I could get more things done in the morning so I feel more accomplished too. But to start out the day on a good note is,
Start taking your blood pressure and compare those two lifestyles together. I think you're gonna go back to coffee in the recliner. Your doctor will thank you.
maybe.
Not sure how we got going down this track, but that's okay.
Yeah, but I think even what you were saying is I think it's the attitude in the morning of still being positive, filled with love for the day. I mean, when I look at the sun, I am like, thank you, God, for this sunny day, especially living in Michigan, and then it just automatically puts a positive thing on the day.
So how'd that go this morning, Mary?
No sun.
Actually, I still got up early, sat in my recliner, and did my Wordle
Yeah.
and drank my coffee. And the sun wasn't out.
Yeah.
So, but the sun adds.
But I think part of it is, when you say thank God for the morning, thank God for the sun, that's part of the step that Lewis is getting at. The fact that you're able to shove other things aside and say, I can go sit. Thank God for the quiet morning and I can go sit. I don't know. I've gotten busier since I've not been working full time. I'm already starting my spring project list. I'm doing the research for all the crap I have to do around my house and starting to put together the lists and what am I fixing here, what am I repairing there, what am I going after. So I sort of feel a little bit of that. Here we go, plus get my child out the door and get my other child out the door and get my wife out the door, whichever, because they all need inspiration first thing in the morning.
So whatever you do, when you do that, I learned this lesson. Aaron, who is not a morning person at all, you don't get up and start singing, so rise and shine and give God your glory, glory, rise and shine. and give God your glory, glory. And from the bed she, stop, Mom, stop.
I am pretty sure we will not hit any YouTube copyright issues with that rendition, so,
But for some people that doesn't
yeah,
work.
that doesn't work. No.
I used to
Aye.
do that to her and she hated me for it.
Was her sister okay with it?
Yeah,
Okay, so you really do.
Okay.
Well,
sorry.
Back in. All right.
So the.
Yes, ma'am.
The thought stopping, if you will, the pushing those things away so you can listen to the word, the spirit. So I think a lot of it starts the night before, when you go to bed, the attitude you take to bed with you, where you let your thoughts rest at night.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, depending upon the cycle of the kind of person you are, I suppose. I think part of the lesson is just any time is a good time to be devoting to God and helping your system and pushing out all the negative thoughts, whether it's in the evening, whether it's first thing in the morning.
Yeah, even when I was working, my time to relax was between steps.
Yeah.
Was between
Yeah.
what?
Between steps, I had to
Oh.
stop at different
Yeah.
stores.
Well, I always found I was a subconscious worker, so if I was having trouble with something I couldn't figure out during the day and I'm dragging it home, I'd think about it as I was going to bed, and I'd usually wake up in the morning, my brain was like, well, just do this, 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 and that. Oh, okay. So, yeah, I can kind of see some of that, too. Heading in the right attitude, going to bed can certainly assist. But the point
Yeah, what's the point?
the point of all this is not here or techniques for doing it. The point is Christ wants all of your attention. He wants,
Continuously.
pray continuously, give it over to Him. Listen to what He would have you be doing. I mean, you'll be doing all sorts of stuff vocationally. Some of you aren't doing much, apparently, according to Paul now, but that's okay. But whatever you're doing, just focus it and give it over. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to give it up, but you have to give it over. You have to put it within priority of what God would want you to do. You're not just doing it because you like to do it. There's a ton of things I would love to do if I had more time. I mean, I don't get nearly enough TV time, and let's not talk about getting to the movies. I've only gotten to one movie in the past 9 months. I'm running out of movie time. Yeah, it's really annoying me. Can't wait for this kid to grow up so I can go to the movies. Killing me. But, sometimes you have to set aside things, and the point is that God would have all of you. You don't get to say, this is my time, Jesus. I'm going to go do this. So, why can't we just go on being ordinary, decent people? Why can't we just go and say, hey, I'm me. I'll try to do some of this stuff.
I don't want to be.
You don't want to be you. You that bad?
Yeah.
Okay. Ultimately, we find it doesn't work. Because once again, we go back to the beginning discussion of, you got to do good. What happens when you don't feel like doing good? You don't do it. There's no, if you just try to be you doing what you're doing, what did Jesus tell you needed to be? He says in there at one point, Jesus told you should be
Perfect.
perfect. Who here is perfect?
Yeah, I'm close.
Okay, good. Good. We know we're not perfect. We can't go that way. That's why we need Jesus to get us to be different.
Well, also, when you say I'm being ordinary, decent people, that is defined in so many ways in the world.
Mhm.
I think without the guidelines of the Bible or something, what is an ordinary, decent person in this day and age? You need to have the guidelines of Christ and the Bible to really
Well, you may find out you're not quite so decent. You might be ordinary,
Absolutely,
but you may find out that
Right.
the things you thought were fairly decent aren't so decent.
absolutely.
You know, I only kicked 3 puppies this week. I think the standard should be 6. Therefore, I'm doing better than the average person. You know, what you find decent may not be decent according to what Christ is telling us. And we're not looking for better than average. We're looking for
Perfect.
perfect. So why does the church exist?
To make little Christ, to nurture them up to be as he created us to be.
To draw us all to Christ.
And to
He's the one
support
that
us in
makes
that
Christ.
endeavor.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what I would
Yes.
consider part of that. But to draw us, and when we lose that focus, what happens?
We screw up.
Well, and the churches they may do a lot of nice things, but if they're not drawing people into Christ, they're not doing their
What we're
jobs.
supposed to be doing,
There's a danger. So we always have to be thinking about how are we drawing people to Christ, because that's what we're here for. We're not here for all the other things. Even studies like this, these are good, these are helpful. But if I'm not telling you in the end that Jesus is the way to life, then it doesn't help.
And I think that's a real easy thing for
Oh, super easy.
churches to fall into, or even we as,
Super duper easy, because there's programs, there's things that you can start and do that maybe are done out of the love of Christ, but don't necessarily draw people to Christ.
and that's a really good reminder, because I think that happens a lot. It's
Yeah.
all meant for good, but you kind of lose focus of why.
Yep.
At least I do.
No, it happens. I mean, a lot of good charitable endeavors lose their way. Thinking about what's going on with a lot of good Christian universities and colleges right now. Why were they started? They were started to bring people into education for the church, to build workers, to build good, solid Christian citizens and educated people, and now many of them are turning away because they're finding they can't make any money on just the church. So they're trying to find other ways to bring other people in and bring other philosophies and thoughts and ideas, and they're having a hard time. I mean, that's kind of an easier example to see where that's happening. It does happen. And I don't say that as a condemnation to everybody. I just say it's something you have to be aware of. You have to think about. Why did God become man?
To bring man to God.
Yes, because we couldn't get there ourselves. We didn't even want to go. You know, we were all in sin. Sinful man was not going, "Hey God, come, let's go do it." No. Jesus came down to bring us to God. And what is the wonderful present the Son wants to present to the Father? It's kind of all the same answer. Yes, us, you. Whenever you talk about Luther's great insight, you know, that you've been saved, adding the words "for you," he went to the cross for you. You know, not just he went to the cross for you, great sinner that you were. For you. That is what Jesus came to do. So is it easy? Is it hard? Is it easy? Yeah, it is both hard and easy, because you don't get to live life the way you really want to live it. But at the same time, you get to live it the best way you possibly could. Forgiven.
Thank goodness.
We've all got a little bit of stuff to work on, huh? Any other thoughts? I'm really not sure what to do with myself without a child attempting to escape from the corner. This is really...
Caught on this,
Hmm?
on the last page of this chapter.
Yep.
Where he talks about the creation and how
Mm. Yeah.
Christ draws us into himself, and man, by virtue of what he loves and gives attention to, those of us in Christ also draw the creation into Christ.
Yeah.
And I just finished the Chronicles of Narnia, and my favorite book is The Last Battle, the seventh book in the series. The Last Battle, where Narnia ends, and they're all drawn into the world with Aslan, the Christ image there.
Mm-hmm.
And, but Lewis's love for the animals and how he illustrates that along with the people, I couldn't help but be touched by this here too.
Yeah, his thinking. No, Ellen, I don't know if you guys caught it or thought much about it, but I laugh when he gets to the part about, and if there is life on other worlds beyond this one. You know, it's kind of a throwaway line, but it's sort of not a throwaway line. You know, he did, what was it? Is it Out of the Silent Planet? His sort of science fiction-y books with aliens and how they would be saved or something. So it's obviously something that was rattling around up in his brain for a long time. It sort of reads as a throwaway line here, but it's really not. It's something he thought about, so who knows. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Man. All right. I got you through this one. Next week will be chapter 9. Why don't we close with a word of prayer? Father, thank you that even though we could not find a way to get to you, that you came here, that you did the work to bring us back. We know that this is not an easy road, it's a narrow road that leads to God, but we thank you that all the work that you have accomplished will make it easier for us. Please just bless us this week as we prepare ourselves to come on Sunday and worship. Bless the pastor as he prepares your word. And just bless our hearts and bless our minds and prepare us to worship you. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.